I know this is design system is quite like popular these days, and everybody is talking about that, and everything was written about that already. But yeah, maybe give me. I'm Daniel, by the way, and Zachary, to share with you a story, how we approached it, how we implemented, you know, our design system in our company, and yeah, maybe you will have some kind of questions in the end. So let's jump into it. This is the question that I received from our management, our business people a lot when we started. Why the hell you need some kind of like design and system? Why system? So there were some arguments already, you know. So we, as Andrea told you, we have a lot of like platforms that we have to operate on, from smaller, very crappy Android smartphones in Africa that you don't know probably, through web application to the biggest smart TVs that are on the market. And in the time, we suffered with consistency and coherency of what we had in that stage. So we had quite challenge times with the brand awareness and so on. Also, we had to think about how to boost our velocity in for experimenting, because we are guys that try to look on the stuff that we are building in like detective ways, and how what works, what doesn't work, and how we can boost it in our speed of the teams. And also, if you have the experimenting in place and you have continuous discovery in place, you are spending less time on your development and designing stuff. What primary button you know stands for, how it looks, how it behaves. It's just part of the questions that we constantly had with our development teams, because for somebody it can be different than for me. So with design system, we try to you know, put together the naming convention that we use. And also we took the opportunity to put it in such a way of documentation that is I think much better now for onboarding the new colleagues, and they are like speeding their way how to produce faster, you know, their tasks from the beginning. But also in overall, it goes, you know, in money and work motivation for a team, because business is about money, and this is where I what Adam Kulhanek, the previous speaker, talked about stress, you know, and how to use the stress and this perma stuff without S. So it could help me in the time that when I was speaking to management, if I knew that. Yeah, so we had a mess when we started. We had like not 50 shades of gray, but 39, and just on iOS. So it was just the screen from iOS team that gave us this list, and hey, pick one. We will put it there. And yeah, we had also supermarket of buttons, so you can choose whatever button you want and place it somewhere. And yeah, maybe it can work. So we tried to fix it somehow, and we failed. We put a little bit more mess than it was, and there was just the reason why we failed is because we started with platforms teams. So we said, yeah, hey, one platform can start on their kind of platform, and we can join with the other platforms and just. But it didn't work how we expected. So I had to go to the management again to give us a little bit of more time, more money. So we changed the philosophy how we approached that. So we had now a design system team with one designer and a couple of developers there, but we failed again because there was quite challenging for all the platforms that we had for one designer and all that he needed to distribute all the time with the platforms teams. But luckily, we find a way in kind of design forum that we put together with designers that are specifically on each platform and developers that are specifically on each platform. So they were linked together, and we started to audit what we had and kindly see what we have to fix, how to fix, and so on. So this slide should demonstrate that there is no one bulletproof that is like a template for everybody that it's well known and you can just place it there in your teams and it goes in the right way. So it doesn't. Sometimes it doesn't work like that. So how we did it? We need to somehow find the foundations for us that can work on all platforms, and they are the same for all teams. So basically, we started with our design principles. What are the principles for Showmax that we see there? So we wanted from the beginning to build personalized cinema in your pocket, and so we defined 4 principles that resonated with us, and this is where we started to create the foundations. So then later on, Zach will talk about design tokens and how it was used for development. I'm sure that you know them, but he'll explain. So we started with the foundations and with the audit that we did for our currently or in the time current components and elements and everything that goes to that. So we find out our color palette, typographies, spacing, then borders, shadows, and all of that stuff. I'll try to switch to give you. Okay, so I will not give you that. I just wanted to demonstrate you how we approach the colors, how we build the color palette with the examples how cinemas are looking in. They have exterior and interior in South Africa, Kenya, Nigeria, and we put it into the mood board and just started from that and put it into the accessibility checkers, and this is the result then. But in that computer, it is not. I'm sorry? Yeah, it was just the demonstration. I didn't want to, put give the details here into it, but yeah. And then, from the foundations that shared all the teams, we had to somehow ensure that all the platforms have their specific libraries, because smart TVs are working quite different than smartphones, for example, and they behave and differently. So they have their specific components and specific libraries as well. And this is where also each team is, for example, the web library, and each team, they have the quite slow. Oh yeah. So each of them, they have all the statuses of the components and ready for implementation. And this is where I'm ending. And I will pass the word to Zach, and he will definitely talk about how he implemented in his team or his part of the product, and this is acquisition and marketing pages, right?
Yeah. In our team, we call ourselves Backend Alpha, and we're basically the onboarding experience for users. So users typically start in the marketing pages, which is just static pages, and then in there we have organic traffic. Campaigns start here because we do a lot of campaigns for basically our 4 plans. It's like a big part of the business. So it's really important that we have the pages that describe these. And then obviously SEO. And secure pages are basically what we call, or like how we named our Rails apps that are just a bunch of web apps that we actually kind of serve out not only to the web, but also to Android phones via the web view. So even though you're in a native app in the Android, you actually are still going through these secure pages through a web view. So it's kind of like distributed across all the platforms. This is just this is a better example of what each of these, or like what kind of the flow would look like for a user. You would start in the marketing pages, you would hit the sign up / sign in page, and then over here would be plan selection, which kind of starts a whole other flow of lots of complexity with payment methods. We have a ton of payment methods because there's just so many different ways that people prefer to pay in Africa. So the flow gets a lot more complicated than this, but just to give you an idea. God, I knew it was going to do this. So in the marketing pages, we're using NextJS, or whatever that says. NextJS is just I guess, I don't work with it that much, but it's essentially like a framework that includes React and stuff like that. And you can spin up a nice kind of static web app, and that's what we've done with it. And then everything else in the Backend Alpha world is just Rails apps. There's actually 3 main Rails apps, and basically we needed to create a design system for ideally all of this. We were hoping that we could somehow create something that would be, I guess, propagatable to all of these different technologies. So anyway, hopefully you can kind of learn from some of the things that I ran into with this. So in the marketing app, we're just using React components. And in the Rails apps, it's a little bit more complicated, or a little bit different, I guess, because Rails is just like a regular MVC framework, and you don't necessarily have the naturalness of just creating components like you can in React, right? You really have to create every request is going to render an HTML page, and then that page is basically whatever was in that page that was rendered on the server at that time. So it's not like you can obviously install React and have all this fancy JavaScript stuff, but it's not easy, especially for us, because we didn't have a lot of fancy bundling tools and stuff like that. So we first looked at plain embedded Ruby, which is really ugly. this would just be, I mean, this is like a super hello world example of like something, people, and you have to like interpolate these variables with these nasty looking squid things, and like essentially it's really like not Ruby, right? Because Ruby is all about simplicity and it's about like plain English. Everything is, you know, easy to read. And so this is like where we kind of depart from the things that we like about Ruby as Ruby developers. So luckily there's a library called View Component that essentially allows you to create HTML templates that are kind of modular with plain Ruby classes, which is really awesome because most of the backend code that we're doing is just with Ruby classes. And you can really just, you know, you can approach it object-oriented style, where you just look at the constructor and you see that this takes people class name, and then, you know, this is bad code, but anyway, you essentially know just from looking at the constructor what it takes, and you can, like, once you start working with it, it's like pretty self-explanatory, like how to use it. Which is cool. So we implemented this View Component library, but it's still a question, like, where's the JS for your apps, for Rails? It's very old school in Rails, at least in our implementation right now. We're using not Webpack, not Rollup or any of these cool things. We're using Sprockets, which this isn't even their logo. They don't have a logo, but I made one for them, and apparently that's a sprocket. So the nice thing about Sprockets is that it doesn't do much. It really just concatenates a bunch of JavaScript files together, and then SHA-256 hashes the contents into the file names, and then that's how you cache bust. And that's it. Doesn't do anything else. So, like, we can't really create some like React library of components and then share them between Next Marketing and between the secure pages. Right, because we've got the React, and then we've got the View Component. It's just two different worlds, and we want to work the way we're comfortable with working. But at the end of the day, we do both actually happen to use SCSS, and we use it with the BEM pattern. So it's a really nice way to organize your CSS. And so luckily, the guy who works in Next Marketing is much better at CSS than me. So this was just kind of a hack to get someone else to do the CSS work. But essentially, we had this brilliant idea that we could just create a node package that would be our React components for Next Marketing, and then have a Ruby gem, which is basically the same thing as an NPM package in Ruby. And then in the top level of the directory, we have a bunch of SAS modules or SCSS modules that we're then consuming. So that was cool. We got that working. But the next question was, like, where do we actually start developing the components? Because you can't just like go into the production code and start changing things around. You'll definitely start breaking things. So we had heard about a package called Storybook.js, and that's like the cool, you know, thing right now. And we were excited about it, even though we didn't really know what it did at first. We just knew it had a very cool logo. But when we did figure out what it does, we wanted to use it. And of course, again, because we're old school Ruby developers, we have to come up with our own special solution or find someone else's special solution. So we found the Ruby equivalent of Storybook, which is called Lookbook, and it's really awesome. It's one of the coolest little finds I've ever found. It's been developed by like a single guy, now it's been absorbed into GitHub's whole view component thing, but it does what Storybook does. And just if you don't know what the hell Storybook is, it's basically, I don't know, like a web app that you spin up and run locally. And then you can build your components into it, and you can basically document them, try them out, change the screen size, test them. And it's awesome. This is what it looks like. I guess you can't really see the edge very well, but this is the important part. You can just see the actual components. You can click the HTML tab, and then you can see like what the actual rendered HTML is like. You've got params over here. You can see the source code. And then on the left panel, you can even create like embedded markdown files that you can actually render the examples into. Okay, so we figured out how to share SCSS, but one of the big things that Dan was telling us about when he was first presenting this to us was design tokens. And design tokens are a really fancy word for sharing code again. But not really code, more like values or variables. So like the ideal scenario is that Dan is basically going to do all the work, and all the designers, because they create a Figma file or a Figma design, and you saw his little design system thing they had going there. And inside of that, they're using colors, they're using, they're using typography, and all of those little designs have properties in them that we can then pull out somehow. So we have a subscription to this really cool service called Supernova, and it's a design system as a service. So it's basically, oh, and it's Czech, by the way. And it's a really cool startup, I guess, right now that does a lot of work for you. So they're already connected to the Figma API, and then they pull out these tokens for you. I don't know how they do it, but eventually they get a bunch of values. So they get colors, they get like the color hexes, they get like, whatever, typography stuff, typography sizes, typography bold, whatever. And then they have these things called exporters that are basically designed and already made for like every platform. You've got the iOS, you've got CSS or SCSS for HTML, you've got like XML files or something that Android uses, and essentially you end up with a machine-generated file of code that like one-to-one translates to their naming conventions. So if this is what they called their like whatever, their desktop, one of their desktop typography settings, it'll turn it into a class. And if you're using Sass, you could just extend the class, and it's like that easy. And so this will just be like this would be a part of like a big directory that has all your design tokens in it. You could just pull this in and just use it wherever. So you never have to like write that again, which is really awesome because we were doing that a lot before. So yeah, I guess we're getting to the end. The moral of the story that I learned anyway is that sometimes you can't have the cool, shiny new library. You might not be able to use Storybook.js, but you might find something just as good, if not better. So keep your eyes open. And also thank you, open source, because that dude did all the work. So that's it. Thank you. Questions?
Hi. I just want to have a question because your biggest market is Africa. Do you accept cryptocurrencies as a Bitcoin?
Not yet, but maybe
not
someday.
Yet. Good answer.
Yeah, a lot of there. At the moment, a lot of people pay with their phones. It's a big thing, especially in some of the like less populous areas. So we have integrations with mobile providers. They can add Showmax to their bill. They can do all kinds of cool stuff like that, but not yet with the cryptocurrency. Someday.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
You use a CSS or CSS for every platform, or you?
No, actually, I'm not sure how they do it in Android and everywhere else. So for just us in Backend Alpha, we do use SCSS for, obviously the NextJS part and the Rails part. But the other guys, I don't know, Martin probably knows, but they can still use the design tokens because the what is it called? The Supernova will end up generating. It's like an XML file. I don't remember exactly how you actually design things in Android, but I know a lot of like the static files are like where you pull static data from are just like a big XML file. So
okay, so they are using different library built from design tokens, but it's not the same code.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, okay. So that's about, as far as we know now, that's about as much as you can share is the design tokens. But like right now, we just have colors and typography. Well, we've implemented colors and typography, but I know that Dan's already done something with borders and spacing and all that stuff too. So you could essentially like, I guess you could in a way automate a lot of that and then just have it kind of populate out to all these platforms. So with this Supernova thing.
Okay, and how do you handle the differences between the platforms? Because one platform could offer one border, next one doesn't support borders and stuff like that.
Yeah, I don't know how you guys do. I mean, you guys have different.
It's in design forum. You will accept.
Actually, yeah. So we have, in the design forum that we have, each designer is quite, in particular team that is working with the developers that's dedicated for each platform. But the foundations that you saw there that are the same for all of them. So it depends if you go to component level, let's say, then sometimes we need to use a native ones for Android, let's say, that makes sense for that particular platform because one of the reasons can be that Africa is quite not covered with internet too much, and you cannot do fancy stuff in there and fancy animations and all the stuff. So you need to think how to design it for a function and not conflicting with the foundations.
And colors, I think, are consistent across everything, right? So there's some things that I guess won't change, or when they do change, they'll change everywhere. So at least we can share those. But yeah, I guess spacing is probably something that's going to change per platform and something like that.